get this recording. All right, so we're on. So again, thank you so much, Sean, for meeting with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Let's just kick this off. So how did you initially become attracted to audio? I mean, what got you interested in this particular subject?
Sound. The sense of hearing is pretty powerful. I mean, I don't visualize the sound. Once or twice I have without chemical assistance. But no, when I was a kid, in my head, I was a very observant kid, and it was really, I got a kick out of listening to stuff and things, and that also, music too, but music and tone and sound and thunderclaps, it was all fascinating. So sound was really interesting for me. That's a general answer. So you can drill down if you want.
Yeah. So I mean, you say, so you're interested in sound as a kid, and that kind of segued into audio, especially with your passion for music. When did you at what age were you like, hey, I'm going to get into to stereo or whatnot, or was it recording first? I don't know, I'm just kind of curious how that, what path you went along, because eventually you founded a speaker company. So I'm just like, what took you from interest in audio to starting Zoo Audio?
C, yes. Only you. His video went down and then he disappeared, and now you are not visible either, Paul.
Our conversation, but I basically was just asking, at what point you said you're interested, you got into audio because you're interested in sound and music, but I mean, how did that transition into founding a speaker company?
There's a audio and sound and playback and engineering was what I used to do to blow off steam. I never thought I was going to make money in the audio world. I mean, it was never going to be my day job. But it kind of happened, and I wasn't, I thought, sure, let's give that a go. I was into other things as well. So I thought maybe I would design something that goes really fast and maybe drive that thing, whether it's a dirt bike or a boat. So I grew up around racing. My dad raced little runabouts. And then, my little neighborhood, when you're 8, being from Utah, when you're 8, you get baptized into the Mormon church. And then in my neighborhood, you also the same day learned how to run from the cops on your dirt bike so that your parents didn't have to come and hassle with that. So So that was kind of what I thought my career path was. The school situation was kind of interesting too. I thought maybe, physics I really was into physics, especially uh, atomic theory when I was a kid. Sound and waves are part and parcel of that. So like it was all the same thing. So I was into thermodynamics. I was into wave function, and that's all the same. And but teaching, you're gonna Richard Feynman. Not everybody could be Richard Feynman. So I thought my odds of being like Richard Feynman are like 1 in 6, well, 4 billion. So that's not real great odds. So anyway, I tried to a go at a few things, and when it didn't work out in the motorcycle world for me, I wasn't quite ready to go back to school. I dropped out of school to do that thing, the motorcycle thing, for a minute, and then I had worked. So as a kid, we put on these big parties. So I was pretty good with pro audio, and I could fix stuff. And Ray Kimber knew who I was from. He put up discotheques along the Wasatch Front here in Utah, Provo, Salt Lake City, Logan. And I was the kid that could fix them and only charged the disco if I fixed it. So I had all kinds of that kind of work. Anyway, so I called Ray. Hey Ray, do you remember me? I'm Sean. And that was back in 94, 95. I'm not ready to go back to school. I want to work for you. And so I worked for Ray for a while, and that was kind of me getting back. Well, that was me working professionally in hi-fi for the first time. I'd never worked in hi-fi. It was always contract labor or pro audio labor or engineering stuff. So that's how I ended in hi-fi, and how I got into hi-fi as far as making it my day job.
Wow. So you just had a good connection in the industry and you said, hey, I'm interested in this. I don't really feel like doing the school thing in that. And I just,
Yeah, I had
your audio career.
Right. So there was 20 years of me being a kid building stuff in my backyard on my table saw. I hijacked my parents' garage. Their garage was quite big. Their house was small, but their garage was big, and I just kind of gradually took more and more of that over. So I was working on engines on one side of the shop and building loudspeakers on the other side of the shop. Sometimes I was building hi-fi stuff for my own use, which was just for my own use. And then other times I was building big pro audio sound systems for other people, or also for my own use and throwing on parties. It was so Ray knew me through the pro audio side. And so when I called him, it wasn't just blind. And Ray Ray is known for his hi-fi contribution, but also Ray came out through the pro audio side as well. He was a installer and worked. I mean, he did home stuff as well. Everybody who's into audio is into audio, all of it. I mean, pro audio, home audio, throwing parties, listening to headphones. When you're addicted to sound, you want it to be as good as it can all the time.
So then, are you pretty self-taught then? I mean, growing up, just doing this, experimenting on your own. I mean, you said you used to build speakers in your parents' garage. I mean, how did that all start? Or did you have a mentor or anyone that kind of taught you speaker design, or was it just trial and error?
Well, so loudspeakers, I viewed it, and those around me viewed it as something really easy. It's a pretty simple electromechanical, electrotransductive. It's raw parts. It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to a third grader. It's still interesting to an adult, but it's rudimentary physics generally. I mean, there's some weird stuff in it. I was never, I didn't have a specific mentor in audio. There were some people in this area doing some pretty interesting stuff. Man, there was a sound company building their own stuff. I forget their name. They built some really cool pro stuff. I found some really interesting books when I was a kid. So it was How to Build Loudspeakers. I forget the author. In it was outlined the Jensen horn, the Bozak, Klipsch folded schematics. That was really fun. So I got a lot of meat and potatoes from that book. Harry Olson's book, I think it's called Music Science, Music and Science. He has one book. So I read Olson, James Jean, Lord Rayleigh, and a lot of the early guys like Helmholtz and Jeans and Rayleigh. They also were in the beginnings of the end of classical physics and the beginning of quantum mechanics, and so there was a lot of wave function stuff happening, and so there was a lot of crossover. So while I was learning about electrons or trying to figure out when we're still trying to figure out what an electron is, I was also trying to figure out why stuff sounded the way it sounded. That was an interesting kind of like a side thing going on in my head, but fascinating. I was still fascinated. I love sound. I mean, I love the stuff, but it's hard to make money in sound. And I knew that as a kid until I started throwing parties. And then I realized, well, you can make some pretty good money throwing parties.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit, just to go back on track as we kind of deviated from our original dialogue here. But just to go back to what we discussed before, what do you see as audio's biggest achievement in the past 20 years?
I just pulled those questions up. We have made stuff sound good that is also small. That's pretty cool. On the pro side, I mean, right now I've got some, I'm playing with, I know it's Bose, but I'm playing with a Bose amp, a PM 8500 that only weighs like 25 pounds, puts out 4,000 watts, sounds fantastic. It has amazing user interface, and who I would have never guessed that 20 years ago. Or another company, Linear Research, power density of 20,000 watts in a 30-pound package. Yeah, you pretty much have to hook it up to your circuit breaker, but it's fun. And it sounds pretty good. In pro world, it sounds amazing. Not as good as the Bose, but it sounds, and the power density is insane. But that's a pretty big accomplishment. The digital side is also pretty impressive. What we've collectively allowed to happen so that people can produce their own stuff on a little box. I mean, like my little rig right here, it's a little Mo2 box and a Rupert Neve headphone amp. I mean, I could record world-class stuff right with this little box in my hand, and that 20 years ago was impossible. So I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I agree. I think, amplification, especially watts, have gotten a lot cheaper and smaller, and, they don't generate as much heat anymore, especially if you're talking like Class D stuff. And,
Yeah.
And, some of the participants here on the call might beg to differ, but those little Bluetooth speakers, some of them actually sound pretty good. I mean,
yeah, that I can't get behind that.
With something like this thing, I mean, there's no sound stage or anything, or pinpoint imaging, but hell, it makes music and it's pretty loud.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on the Bluetooth soundbox.
Well, I'm just always surprised what can be done with those little devices myself. So, moving on to the next one, where do you see the biggest need for improvement exists in the hi-fi world?
I think we're doing pretty good. There's a lot of experimenters. There's a lot of individuals doing some really cool stuff. for a while there, it seemed like in the late 90s, the DIY thing, it got super small and condensed, basically glass audio. It was condensed down to a single little magazine. The internet has really helped bring back DIY and experimentation. So I want to see more, I think more people messing around with audio. But yeah, so we could improve there, I think. And especially big brands. I mean, following Nelson Pass's lead, you know, he's made it, but he still encourages people to experiment and do better. That's more of those that have made it maybe should do that.
No, I think it's awesome what's available DIY. I think about like Linkwitz, who's no longer with us, but he produced some incredible designs that were, you know, like you think about the Plutos or the LX Minis, where you can literally go down to Home Depot and, you know, buy plumbing couplers in PVC pipe and build yourself a speaker, right? I mean,
yeah,
you know, the enclosure wise, because there were some other complexities there with the crossover biamping and that stuff. But yeah, I mean, in Nelson, you know, with the first watt kind of open sourcing the designs, you can build some of his stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that's really how I got back into audio myself. Was, you know, I was into it as a teenager, and then as I got older, I walked away, and then I got back in the DIY world and started messing around because it was fun. Wish more people would do it, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Any plans to release any open source DIY designs?
Yeah, we got two brewing. There's one that's called the circa 1931 that's on our website. We have a little DIY menu button. It was way too complicated. So the plans that are alluded to on our website are old and seeded, but because it was just epoxy eliminates half of the customers and right off the bat. And so we think we've found something similar to what's posted there that we can launch once we get a handle on what COVID's going to do. We think that that we'll be back to normal July next year, but we're kind of hesitant. I mean, our business is doing fine, but where we allocate cash and where we put inventory on our shelves is we're just being a little careful. So the DIY is delayed, and so are our more expensive products. We've delayed that stuff intentionally, and we're focusing more on our blue collar line during this.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. You gotta anticipate economic changes and what might occur and scale to that. I think you've answered this one. I've asked you, how is listening important to you, or listening to music is important to you in your life, and you've already expressed that that's very important. That's what got you into this hobby. So tell us a little bit about your home system. I know you alluded to the fact that it wasn't always a constant. So like what do you listen to now, I guess? What's your home system today look like?
So at the risk of sounding arrogant, I'm going to say this is a super boring question and answer it differently. And then we can swing back around. But so like, I think I have a really interesting point of view on sound. And so I'm going to share that. Sound, we're in the sound field all the time. And like, so right now the crickets are starting to light up. I've got my I can hear the stupid AC unit that's driving me crazy. A little bit of noise from the traffic, a mile away, and so sound is engaging. I sitting down in my home and listening to music is on the boring side for me. I do it, but it's not as interesting as if I'm hiking up in the mountains and I just have my ears on and I'm listening to everything that's going around, which drives people, which you can lose your mind trying to listen to everything at once. But I think that's interesting, trying to listen to everything all at once and not just focused on the music, is really a fascinating thing. And very few of us, including myself, because we can't digest all that information, we go crazy. You can pull it off for about 30 seconds. And then after that, your brain starts to turn off. But So okay, so sorry to be a dick, but so my home system, it's a little bit of a Frankenstein setup. Right now I've got some older speakers, the Druid 5s in the rig, and I'm listening to those on the Bose PM 8500. And then I've got another set of speakers that are Frankenstein speakers. They don't have a name. It's a triamp system, also on another Bose PM 8500, and it's kind of stupid, crazy, but it sounds really good, and that's what's going on in the room, right? And then there's like 4 turntables active. There's a big recording console, a Rupert Neves Design 5060 in the middle. But I'm also Black Ice. I don't know if you guys have seen the new Black Ice stuff that Jim Fostex is doing, but that preamp that they do is pretty cool. It's got some weird things that it does, but it sounds really good. So right now I'm playing with that in the system as well. Yeah, it's always different. My system's never really stable, and that's kind of a problem, really. When I'm trying to finalize product, I do like to have stable systems. So I'll dedicate another room when it's time to really dial in, and it needs to be stable for a couple of months when you're doing final adjustments on a speaker you're gonna put out there.
Awesome. No, I don't take insult to your comment about, no worries there. I was thinking when you're describing your hike in the mountain that you're like Eckhart Tolle, the power of now, where you're just fully immersed in the moment, and the sound is part of that.
No, sound is that is sound for me. If I want to be fully immersed in the moment, I try to listen to everything all at once. And I tried to teach my kids this, and sadly, all 3 of them have some psychological problems with hearing. It's not something I'm recommending everybody go out and do, but trying to listen to everything is interesting. I will say that. It's an interesting thing. It's not living in the now. It's more than living in the now. It's even just going like to a subway stop and listening to everything at a subway stop is truly fascinating. And it teaches you about yourself as well. It's cool. It's like meditation on steroids.
I can see it. Well, moving on then to the next one. Who in the industry do you most admire, with us or not?
Dead people are easier, so we'll start with dead people. Herman von Helmholtz, I would have loved his life. Sir James Jean would have loved his life. Lord Rayleigh would have loved his life. So those are all 3 mostly they're scientists, which was what I thought I would want to be. But also they played a whole lot and contributed to the world of audio in pretty important ways, really important ways. All 3 have books. The Helmholtz's The Klangtone, the theory of sound, I believe. It's a big 2-volume book. Get it? It's basically the beginnings of our modern audio world. Sir James Jean integrated modern test and measurement systems. So the oscilloscope was hitting, and when he was writing his book, and then Rayleigh's book is more about the science of instruments. But those 3 books are pretty powerful. And then I don't know anything about Harry Olsen's personal life, but his book also was really influential for me. So I look up to his book. And then there's a lot of really fun books. Another one that's not technical that I really dig, The Ocean of Sound by, I think it was Toop. The Ocean of Sound. I forgot the author's name on there. A pretty interesting book that helped me think about listening to everything at once. And then others, of course, Nilsson Pass has kind of been I've looked up to him as in a mentor. I try not to put people on pedestals, but I kind of do a little bit with Nilsson. I think Steve Guttenberg is a kick in the pants. I like watching Steve's stuff. And I think he's really beneficial just because he loves this stuff and he talks about it in ways to engage people. I like Steve. There's a lot of people I really dig. Rupert Neve did some really fantastic stuff. He's still with us. He helped me figure out how to look at amplitude response in the time domain and why the two are not actually tied together with a fulcrum in the middle. You can look at the time domain independent of the frequency domain, and that's a pretty interesting concept. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who've done a lot of cool stuff in audio, really. And they're characters. Oh, Gene Cervinski. I never met him, but he was really influential as I was coming up to the double D's. I got to work with some of his pro audio products as a kid and was really impressed. And then I got to hear some crazy ass stories about Gene in LA from Lars Nordland. Neither of those two guys are with us anymore, but Lars worked for Gene for at least 5 years. And yeah, the disco scene coming on at the time. You can imagine the stories.
Oh, yeah.
They did some really crazy science experiments.
I can only imagine, especially the disco era. What about for you personally? What are you most proud of, is from an audio perspective, accomplishment-wise?
We build things. I think that's pretty cool. We build a lot of stuff, and a lot of people like it, and it's pretty satisfying to see something exist in your head, and then to make it with your hands, and then to know that other people are enjoying it. It's I'm pretty proud of that. Yeah.
That's rad. I mean, I can only imagine the satisfaction you get from being in the industry, especially with your passions.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird thing. Like I don't need to know that people, when I get a postcard from somebody, I'm like, oh, that's cool. They took the time to write a postcard and send it to me. That's pretty neat. But when we're making this stuff and we're shipping this stuff out the door, and we know that it sounds fantastic, and we've done all we could to make them happy, and then it doesn't come back, that's the saddest. It's not about the money. It's about that we made this, that crafter, what are they, anyway, yeah, I have a lot of pride in the things that our guys and me, I mean, I was sanding my ass off today. So, what we all like making stuff. It's pretty cool.
Got it. You're a builder. You're passionate about creating.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think this next one you'll like. Have you spent any time studying the human ear and its functionality?
Yeah, two distinct times in my life. When I was, in my teens, I studied it. Physiology was interesting just because I was fascinated about sound, and it was also in Gene's book. I think chapter 1, or was it? Yeah, no, it could have been Lord Riley. But anyway, physiology was it was Gene's. It was a chapter. I wasn't really the body wasn't really that interesting to me as a kid, but I studied it. And then when Rupert Neve was talking about our time domain sensitivity, then I had to reconsider what I had learned from Gene's book, which is, I think, 1920, 1930. So yeah, I reevaluated after reading what Rupert was talking about in the 60s and studied it.
So what you learned, then, do you apply that to your craft today?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's more, and so yeah, the ear is a part of the physiological experience, but there's more than just the ear. The ear is where the intelligence is extracted, but we hear through the whole of our system. That's why when you go to a doom metal show, and it's 120 dB, it feels right. where if you turn it down or the bass isn't right, it doesn't feel right and it won't be right. Even though the same amount of intelligence is hitting your eardrums, the rest of your body is not getting the immersive experience it needs. So there's more than just the ear, but I'm not an expert with the physiology or psychoacoustics, but in moments I've studied them in detail.
You bring up a good point about more than just hearing, because I've always felt that the best experiences are visceral, when you actually feel the music. I mean, that's really what I love the most about a live performance. The amplified music live performance is like the sound is like resonating in my body.
Yeah. Chest cavity, your brain cavity, your muscle tissue, your bones everywhere. All that is muscle memory is a thing. And it also has to do with sound and how we perceive it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to shift back to more on Zoo Audio. I'm really curious how the company came to be named Zoo Audio.
All right, it's super boring. Mark at Rogue Audio asked me that same question when we were just getting our feet wet in the industry. I told him the story. It's an engineered name. My wife and I were brainstorming, and he said, "Dude, do yourself a favor and never tell that story to anybody ever again, because that's the lamest story there ever was." And so I usually tell the story about Mark telling me how lame the story is. So there's both.
And there's no wrong answer there. I mean, you came up with the name, and
we wanted it to be the logo and the name in one. It needed to be timeless. We didn't want the animal reference of ZOO, so ZU made it its own thing. So we wanted it to be kind of its own entity, its own thing. It was pretty good. It's not the world's best name, but it's not bad.
Man, I was totally thinking that it was like some ancient language and it meant like the goddess sound or something like that.
Yeah, pre-Sumerian.
Well, I'm not sure if you can share with us what's next for Zoo, but I'm curious, you say you've reevaluated things with COVID, but is there anything in the pipeline that you can discuss or that might be coming out soon that you don't mind sharing with us?
We're always working on stuff. And so most of it doesn't happen. Most of it doesn't come out of my head onto a real product. So I hesitate to talk about futures, not because of the sales side. It's just because what I'm excited about now might not be that exciting. But there is a couple of products that I'm pretty excited about. So Eminence launched a 21-inch woofer December last year, and treated it from the ground up, finite element analysis, and they did a really good job. It's got a big 6-inch voice coil on the thing, a huge slug of neodymium 50, and paper, and I like paper. Good strength to weight, good damping properties, and I looked at it. I was like, I got to try one of those. So we got a couple of those in to experiment with, and I was really impressed. And so we developed a couple of products around it, 3. One is a direct radiator 32-inch cube subwoofer for pro audio application. It's light, so like a JBL 218 weighs 220, 240 pounds. Doesn't sound awesome, doesn't sound bad, it's tough. Puts out 140 dB SPL 1 watt 30 hertz. This 32 cube with the 21-inch fits through doors, only weighs 140 pounds, has the same SPL, has better group delay numbers. We use rocket fuselage for the port tubes. It's pretty cool. That's going to happen. So that one isn't anywhere on our site, but that's going to happen. It's not hi-fi, I know, but it's fun. It does sound good in a home. If anybody has an unfinished basement, it will fit through your door. So 2 of those on a side is what I recommend. Actually, just a left and a right should suffice. You should be able to, well, in testing, I've developed a relationship with this crazy guy in Houston area named Rick Henthorn, and he's been testing some stuff with us, and he destroyed some LED lights with his testing. He was the guy who turned me on to the Bose as well as the Linear amplifiers. Really cool guy, Rick Henthorn, Rick R something H Audio, Rick Henthorn Audio. Anyway, and then that subwoofer transfer. So there was another product that me and Adam DeCario, one of the original founders of Zoo, who's now in the software world making real money. We were working on this thing we called the throwback. Yeah. And then like that product, another one that also uses the 21, but it uses our coax that we use out of our Soul speaker. So it's a do-it-all speaker that doesn't need biamplification, is capable of insane sound pressure levels, super clean. So the Gene Cervinski aspect, as long as it's clean, loud is a good thing. So this fits. It'll do double duty. It'll be a great side fill monitor for loud playing drummers, or for those who do pop-up shows, or those who want to have, live Wagner levels in their home with a single-ended triode. This is a capable kind of product. It sounds fantastic. And it looks like the Cube sub is for sure moving forward. And this hybrid full range do-it-all loudspeaker is probably, so Voice of the Theater-esque, if you guys remember the Voice of the Theater. So we've been calling it the Voice of God internally. Bad name. But, and then there's a top box horn loaded using the coax that'll be for the pro audio side, that'll fit on top of that 32-inch cube, 32-inch cube, but using the 21 sub. And then there's going to be a 14-foot horn. We're not fully sure the exit on the horn. The 14-foot horn is also going to be associated with that 21-inch, so it'll have a 2-to-1 compression in the throat. The exit's probably going to be 5 foot, and it's probably going to be a single composite straight horn. That way we can keep the weight down. It'll nest. You can put it in a semi, ship it to shows. Really, it's for touring or big stuff. But I'm sick of, so when I go to these outdoor events, these festivals, the sounds kind of suck, especially the bass. So we want to fix that. So that's why we're doing these this 14-foot long straight horn. And they can be arrayed in ways so that the Red Rocks in Denver, for example, who's getting the next town over complaining about noise ordinance problems, which is true. You do have a right to quiet enjoyment of your home. You can array these in which the bass will produce a planar wave so that you can steer or direct how the bass propagates through the area. So you don't have to just have bass isn't inherently omnidirectional. Bass is, it's relative to wavelength and the source of the waves. So we're pretty excited about those products. There's a couple things happening in hi-fi, but I'm gonna not talk about those yet. There's a new definition, which is a top model that's coming. We've talked about that. Jerry Powell over on the East Coast has the beta pair. Archie down in you guys I think he's part of your club. I don't know if he's active, but Archie's been pushing to, hear a set of something like that. And then we have a product called Definition that also is in the middle of a revision, a massive revision, which we're going to trickle down some of that big dominance tech, which is a line array, but it's not a focused array. The original one was a focused array. This one is just a true line source, 3 coax array with 410 subs plus a 21, because we just love this 21.
Pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, we have fun. I mean, our designs are typically fun.
I was thinking, you brought a speaker last year to the Speaker Fest. I mean, I know you're delivering it to some of our attendees or members, but what speaker was that? That thing sounded awesome.
I apologize. So last year I went to like 14 shows. Which show are we talking about?
It was in Scottsdale, and you
Oh, right.
delivered this like a two-way.
Yeah, it was
It was like a taupe color.
Right, Soul Supreme, and that's so we launched the Soul Supreme about a decade ago, and it hasn't had a single revision.
That one was good. I liked it.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
So I am curious if you could describe a little bit about your bass ports. They're unique on your hi-fi speakers. They're like these bottom slits. I'm sure you talk about how it functions in a lot of your marketing materials, but if you could just go into like, why did you use that as opposed to a traditional bass port?
Right. So ports, everything is a tool in the, when you're designing stuff, depending on what your design, what you want to accomplish. In a home, for me, ports suck. They increase time delays typically because you're limited on what you can do. So the old timers, I talk about these old books that are 100 years old or older in the case of Helmholtz, but the old timers have this thing that I would like to see brought back. It's called theatrical perfection. It's when you basically have a whole auditorium to do whatever the hell you want to with the sound. And that's fun. I like that. But when you have to squeeze that kind of tech and sound and glory into your little basement or big basement, it's still a little basement compared to a big, huge, auditorium, you have to make some pretty significant design not shortcuts. Things get compressed. So bandwidth gets compressed, or if you don't compress bandwidth, your overall sound pressure level potentials get compressed. So horns. I'm a horn fan. They don't fit in basements. So I want it, and I like direct radiators, but I like more bass than direct radiators can give you. And I didn't want things to be complicated. I didn't want to say to my customers, hey, you have to bi-amp this, or you have to tri-amp this, and you have to have different gain structures. Oh, and you also have to buy the other thing too. I wanted a box that somebody could hook up that would, whether it was a tube amp or good sounding solid state, and it fit. And it was natural, and it had low group delay, so that all the frequencies are hitting you about the same time. In 94 and 95, I was working with the late, great Ron Grivey. Anybody read Cycle World during 1980, 75 through maybe 90, you read Ron Grivey. He was editor-in-chief for 14 years and then was a contributor before that. Anyway, I got to work with him in the motorcycle world. This cool guy who was definitely a self-taught engineer, redneck engineer. He taught me that, what a Baja hammer was. That's a rock. So he was sitting in traffic in LA working for Cycle World, and he was thinking about how to make his bike go faster, because he's, racing the Baja 1000 and doing well, but, only taking second. And he was going to beat, he was going to win this thing once at least. And so exhaust systems, he basically took in his head, he did some acoustics research and thought, well, okay, so if the high velocity position is the center point of the actual flow, then why are we putting the sound damping material around the point of lowest pressure or highest pressure, least velocity? So in his head, he basically inverted the muffler. And so I'm working with Ron in 94, and he's telling me his story, and I'm like, dude, this is great loudspeaker tech. I mean, we got to try this. He said, yeah, we got to try this. You go for it. I don't care about loudspeakers. So the Grivey design, it does function as a Helmholtz resonator for a good portion of the bandwidth. It also has quarter wave tuning, so transmission line elements of the model, and then a little bit of the horn aspect. So the idea is the Grivey loading is to minimize turbulence. So you minimize velocity noises that come out of the thing. You minimize the group delay. So you minimize the amount of mass that the system will load into the air mass that will be loaded to the cone, the moving membrane. And so that keeps group delay numbers up. It keeps turbulence low. And then you can also tune it to a broader bandwidth than you normally can with a traditional port. So those are the three elements. It's not perfect. It's not nearly as good as a full straight horn, for sure. But it's better than a standard port relative to fitting a small box with good bass, with high efficiency in your home. So for home application for hi-fi, yeah, it's pretty snazzy.
Wow, thanks for that really awesome explanation.
Yeah, I hope it was awesome. I don't know. I tried.
I mean, now I'm gonna have to go read a bunch of books to understand it, but not.
No, well, and I did. That was, I was trying to be lay about that. If there's elements, you know, hit me back in the questions, the Q&A part. I don't try to talk technical.
Yeah, no, I'm just messing with you. I was
Okay.
just,
All right.
I was just, it was a good explanation, and basically it shows how thoughtful you were in that approach. You chose that mechanism, even though it's more complicated.
Thanks.
What about no crossovers?
Again, for hi-fi, it makes a lot of sense to achieve a certain sound goal. I've never been a big fan. So one of the first speakers I ever purchased were the Klipsch Scalas. Got a good deal from the local university. You know, actually they were going into their dumpster. So that was a really good deal. And I spent a good year and when you're 14, a year means every day after school. It's a lot of fucking time trying to get these things to sound good, and ripped out all the crossover networks, tried, because those old La Scalas used a series system. It was pretty cool. So I tried parallel. I tried different caps, got rid of the Mallory oil electric motor capacitors they had in there and put some anyway, after playing around, I ended up just tri-amping it and using line level filters. I was like, yeah, this sounds way better. And so as a very young, impressionable kid, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do speaker level crossovers if I can avoid it. For one, it doesn't fit for theatrical perfection. It only, speaker level crossovers work for home audio, where power densities are small, with SPL levels are small. But I wanted a holistic sound when I'm listening in my basement or in my living room or wherever I am in my house. And paper cones, Harry Olsen's design, our 10-inch full ranger, for example, it's based off of Harry Olsen's design. He did all the jib factor, the relationship between the spider and the surround and the compliance between those two elements, the cone profile, the cone material, the damping qualities of the cone, the stiffness of the cone, all that stuff Harry did in 1930s at RCA. So we're standing firmly on his back with almost all of our designs. The 2-inch voice coil, and even the profile is Harry's old profile on our cone. The Wizard cone also Harry's. Well, I don't know if that's specifically Harry's, but all the relationships on our driver go right back to Harry Olsen. And there is something when you design a speaker to be as broadband as possible. And full range is a technical term, basically 32 hertz to 8 kilohertz. That's a full range technically. That's a technical term, full range driver. I mean, it's not full range like we think about, but anyway, crossovers seem to not allow as much fidelity as designing the driver and the loudspeaker cabinet together to remove as many of those other filtering elements as possible. So we like the sound.
Got it. Makes sense.
And there's other ways you can get there using crossovers. I'm not saying there's only one way to skin a cat. I'm just saying for me, it was a fun exercise, and it works, and we can put a high degree of quality in our products without having to sink a bunch of cash into areas that really just hinder sound. That was a little loaded, but anyway, it's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Thanks for the explanation. I mean, yeah, you know, if you've achieved your design goals and you don't need these to cross over, it works.
Thanks. Yeah.
And your drivers are bespoke, right? I mean, you have them designed specifically for your products, right?
The largest portion of 60 to 70% of the cost of the driver is in-house. So the design itself is Harry Olsen's design. We tweak glues, the paper fiber content. It's a highly cotton. Cotton is basically, if you want as much nitrocellulose as you can get, you want cotton. It also has good damping qualities. So we start with cotton, but a company called RH makes the cone. Eminence and US Steel do a lot of work for us. Eminence makes the voice coil. They do that assembly up. Yeah, and Eminence is a really cool company. I mean, when I was in the 80s, Eminence was what you bought when you couldn't afford your JBL replacement drivers. But even then, you put that stuff in your old JBL boxes and you're like, wow, these sound pretty good. And they didn't blow up, and they were cheap as shit back in the 80s. So, but now Eminence, they're a legit high quality blue collar manufacturer. They make a lot of stuff. We work really closely with them on the majority of our products. So we also work with Radian, but we buy an off the shelf part from Radian. With Eminence, it's the voice coil is very specific. The glues are very specific. The cone profile is specific. The magnet's specific. The T-yoke, the whole thing. Now, from their parts catalog, there's about, I don't know, 300,000 different parts that they are in use. They make 20 or 30,000 custom drive units for other people. What you see on the Eminence website, they're 50 to 100 drivers, represents a very small portion of what they actually make.
Gotcha.
But like a lot of the pole pieces we manufacture, we turn that in Ogden. We do all that layup, that assembly. Anything that uses epoxy, anything that uses carbon nanotubes, all that is done in-house.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, you do a lot of manufacturing in partnership with
yeah. So we spec out a certain series of parts to Eminence. We get a raw part back, and then we further manufacture that part. And the cost is, there's nothing that in any, so we make about, let's see, there's 6 specific parts that, drivers that we make. All 6 of those, the bulk of the cost is on our side. I mean, in our house. So lathe work, epoxy work, tubes, whatever, all that stuff is, yeah.
I can imagine with all the machining for like the phase plug or for your compression driver, that like horn flare. I don't know what it's called, but
yeah. And well, so the compression part, so that's a Radian part out of Southern California. So that tweeter that uses the compression component, it's a 2-to-1 compression horn, 1.5 to 1 actually, 2-inch exit. That's a BP 850, right? You can just go and buy that off a US speaker, or we sell it on our DIY kit as well, all matched up. But yeah, that Radian makes they're another company that's also underrated. Their tweeters in the pro world, especially in the studio world and stage monitor, people get it. The Radian tweeters are known to be one of the top 3 brands. They make really good stuff.
Awesome. I noticed that you're starting to sell some Rogue equipment on your website. Can you describe that partnership? I mean, are they going to start selling speakers for you, or how does that
So we're totally independent. I mean, if you guys know Mark O'Brien, and have him on your show, by the way, Mark is a character, and get him talking, because man, he's got stories and he's smart as shit, like super smart. Smart as shit is like not the right way to say that, but incredibly intelligent guy. We have a lot of respect for what they make. They're kind of like us. They like to make stuff. They like to think about it. They like to create it. Then they like to make it, and they like to sell it. We were getting a lot of customers, so our product is pretty finicky. Because there's no crossover in our loudspeakers, the majority, very few elements. The amplifier loudspeaker matchup is pretty critical. If you can't just go put an old Krell from the 90s and expect not to have your ears bleed. Your ears are going to bleed. So people kept asking us, oh, hey, what amps? And we'd tell them all these esoteric tube amps, or we'd tell them, Pass Labs XA 30.5 or a 30.8. Now I can tell them the XA 25, which is even less, so we're not scaring customers off. We started telling them, hey, the Rogue Sphinx is a really good sounding amplifier. It's a single package. It's only 4 inches tall. It's great company, killer value. Buy that, and then tell me how bad it sucks with your speakers. And then they call us back. Oh, it sounds great with our speakers. Great. We also did the same with old Marantz's. People, I have a problem. My speakers sound crappy. Okay, well, what are you running? Oh, we got an old Krell from the 90s. Okay, get rid of that. Use it as anchor or whatever you want. Try something else. And while I'm disparaging, sorry, but I don't believe we all hear the same. What I like isn't necessarily what you like, Paul, or Rick, or Dave, or Bob. Spice Dave, that's a good one. So we all hear differently. All of our physiological makeup is different. What we respond to is different. So while I might have a terrible experience with Krell, you might have a great one. But I'm not judging. So Rogue came about because we were sick of telling people to go buy this, and they couldn't find it, and they'd call us back, and an hour in conversation later. So I ordered a bunch and said, I'm just going to send you one, you try it out. So we started doing a loaner amp. It's just, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay, well, great. Then now go find one. I'll send UPS tag and you can send this back. And then with the beginning of Corona, honestly, I was pretty nervous. I've got some smart people that I'm friends with in the medical side of things, and they were saying, hey, this is really scary. Whatever cash you have laying around, put it in inventory. And so we did. And so we bought a bunch of Rogue and a bunch of other, we bought a ton. We spent all available cash on inventory. So we started selling it as well, just to, as a hedge bet.
Got it. Interesting. Well, that's good feedback, and that's great news that Rogue's a good pairing. I'm sure there's a number of people that will be curious in Rogue parts or products now.
Yeah, and there's other, sure, and Pass and Lieben and Audion and old Marantz's and some of the Sansuis with the Hashimoto transformers, and some of the Melody stuff out of China is amazingly good. So there's a lot of good brands. But in the big picture, for me, there's a lot more junk, for hi-fi. But our priorities are all different. Most of us don't listen to the same songs. We all have our senses and tastes. But Rogue is worth checking out. Yes, thanks.
Well, I'll check them out.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes the canned questions. I did get some emailed to me from members, if you don't mind me just clicking them at
No
problem. This one comes from Jeff, and he's asking about the pros and cons of an open baffle design.
Wave function. Open baffles are as raw as you can create and there's no way, if you're a metalhead, open baffles, no matter how hard you try, are never going to be satisfying from my experience. So it's a dipole, and anytime you have dipole relationship, no matter how much you boost or gain, if you're going to get if you're going to have a 20 hertz to 100 hertz bandwidth at your listening position, it's going to be through phase interaction, superposition, and group delay nightmares. So open baffles can sound great. I mean, Nilsson makes an open baffle. It sounds great. But when you put on, I don't know, Thou or The Body or Primitive Man or most any modern metal band, it doesn't sound right.
What I'm curious, just because I like heavy metal. I'm more like old school though, like I like Dio, stuff like that. But
Rainbow.
yeah, you got it. The Iron Maiden things. Yeah, early Metallica from the '80s. Anyway, what is a good metal speaker?
Live. Go to the show.
I can just never get
There's
that.
no way around it. There's no way around that.
I just never get that feeling at home, you know.
Well, no, that one that I'm talking about that we might do as a DIY package that has the 21 in it, it's capable of full metal show experience in your basement with 50 watts or in your living room. But your neighbors are going to be super pissed off at you. But you will have a real metal experience. So whatever we call that, it's coming. So yeah, that's a speaker I can recommend. Another one that I can get behind. Well, as a kid, I got so the Klipsch Lascala / Cornwall or the Klipsch horn. Sure, there's some problems there, but if you mate that with 4 18-inch Sherwin-Vega subs and you put those in your ceiling, that's a pretty cool way to get that. So that was my first experience with getting good, Deep Purple, early Blue Oyster Cult, Sabbath. That sound in my living room was putting 418s in my ceiling in the rafters in the right size box refrigerators, and then having a pair of Lascalas or Klipsch horns up front. Now there's some problems there. You have some group delay issues there, but if you triamp that, you can make that work too. So and let's see, some other cool, the Voice of the Theater, that'll do it. Most of the old Western Electrics will do metal pretty good, but again, you have to have 418s to complement them. DeVore probably again, but you need 418s or a big 21 or the two 21s that we're going to put out there.
I'm just gonna have to stick to live when
Live.
COVID ends. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to go to the show.
This isn't happening in my house.
Yeah. Well, the show is where it's at, especially if it's a small club. Like, like I Harvey at work has really got me into doomy, soupy. It's shoegaze for metalheads. So like Thou, The Body, Primitive Man. For the most part in the US, these are smaller clubs, 500 people or less. Go to those shows. It's amazing.
I'll have to check them out. I mean, right now nothing's going on, but
Yeah. Yeah, July next year.
All right. How about this? Sorry to derail you again. This is another one from Jeff. He's asking about, the pros and cons of having a full range speaker.
SPL levels. You have to be really careful of how your wavefront propagates relative to the bandwidth. It's tricky. So it's hard to get high SPL. It's hard to get good bass. It's hard to get high extension, and usually it's hard to get good frequency response. And then that's all in addition to what I said earlier about how the wave propagates. How its polar response actually looks, what it looks like. So full rangers are tricky. There's not. I never want to do a full range driver, actually. They don't make any sense to me from when I put my science hat on. It's like, why would I want to do this? Well, yeah, so it's a blending of science and art on a full range driver. There are a few that you can get to sound good, like the Nilsson's the Kleinhorn that he did with a louder driver. That's pretty impressive. Sure, it's got massive group delay, but the group delays that it has are in such a low wavelength that it really doesn't make any real significant difference. There's a couple of guys out of the UK. Oh man, there was some interesting stuff happening at the turn of this century, with full rangers and rear horns attached to them. So I think you can make it happen, but putting a full ranger in a small box and put it on a stand, again, blood comes out my ears almost every time.
Got it. I'm not a big fan myself, although I've assembled a couple like from Mark Audio drivers, and they were all right. But
yeah, they're good for headphones.
Yeah. What about, here's another one from Jeff. He's asking, and I didn't really know this, he's saying, why did Utah become a Mecca for speaker designers?
I would have to go with religious cults. There's a lot of religious cults in Utah. I have no idea, man.
Happenstance.
Well, so we do have the Hill Air Force Base. The education is pretty good. I mean, I can't speak for me. I had 2 or 3 really good teachers growing up. One was physics and got me excited about physics. We do care about education and learning. Arts, I'm talking Mormon culture. I should just address the elephant. So Mormon culture, art is encouraged. Education is encouraged. And then we have a lot of tech really close by with Hill Air Force Base. There's some cool tech. Also, I'm just looking down the way. We have Little Mountain out there, which is part of the bigger complex. It was the Manhattan Project backup. So during that whole time when people were, making the atomic bomb, there was all this weird side project stuff happening in Utah, especially around the Ogden area. We had Marquardt, which made a lot of cool impulse jet engines. Anyway, there was a lot of cool acoustic tech that was also happening in and around the Ogden area. We're 40s, 50s, and 60s. So maybe there was some fallout. Most of that basically is cobwebs now. I mean, there's a few active components of the military stuff. I mean, for sure, Hill Air Force Base is still going at full tilt, but a lot of that weird secret covert project stuff largely is just cobwebs. But
yeah, just there were some smart people back in the day, and in that maybe audio was their hobby on the side while they were working on other things.
Yeah, so we had the Hi-Fi shop in Ogden and the Hi-Fi Murders. So that's have Ray Kimber come on your show and have him tell you the Hi-Fi murder stories. Crazy shit. But the Hi-Fi shop, when I was a kid, hey mom, take me down to the Hi-Fi shop, and I got to listen to some really cool high-end equipment set up really nice by, I think his name was Kent Larson, who really cared about the demo. It wasn't the demo in the 90s where it's like, everybody's blazing on some kind of chemical, and you walk in and everything made your ears ring because they set it up while they were blazing. And so of course it's going to make your ears ring because it sounds like shit because they were on something when they set it up. I mean, I don't know. My hi-fi experience in the 90s was really terrible. So, but in the 70s and 80s, hi-fi was cool. I mean, it was cool in my town.
Wow, your childhood and mine is very different. I mean, you had the subwoofers as a kid and cool hi-fi shops in the 80s. And
well, I had a table saw. If you didn't have a table saw, you were disadvantaged. So I did have some privilege with that table saw. I mowed lawns, and I could make trolling motors run, and I could make bass boats go fast. So I had cash like crazy. So I had no shortage of cash as a kid.
Nice. Well, this next one is from Christopher, and he asks, should a speaker disappear? And is Zoo different in this regard compared to other speakers on the market?
You should be able to recreate a very convincing stereophonic sound field with 2 speakers. There's a lot of elements there. So you have room and all the boundary issues and energy storage and reemissive you have the room, which absorbs sound and also pushes sound back in at another time So that component will smear the reality of the stereophonic image. The speakers themselves, there's no way to have transduction of power without having distortion of some sort. So your loudspeakers are going to produce some sort of distortion, whether it's harmonic or time, amplitude, SPL, and all that is dynamic. And then you have the recording, and then the playback apparatuses of the recording. So there's a lot of elements there. Yes, at times I think that it's real to have your loudspeakers disappear and you are immersed in that sound field. Radiohead Kid A is one I put on at hi-fi shows because, one, I like the music, it's hard to get sick of, and it's fully immersive. Zappa, not immersive. Fantastic music, but the way Zappa recorded was not immersive. It was a choice. Phil Spector did some cool immersive stuff in mono. And so there's again, a lot of ways. If you want to be immersed and have everything disappear, there are ways that you can make that happen, and choices like, we talked about open baffles. Open baffles can do that in a way too, but it's not through some ideal absolute version of sound. There's no absolutes in sound or in how we perceive or really in science generally. So it's all about, in this world of audio, it's about how we respond to the thing we're doing. And so what gets me going is not the same that might get Jeff going, but maybe. So yes, I think it's okay for loudspeakers to disappear. Yeah, I think that's totally a real thing, but it's hard, and it's not always the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the recording is key too. You gotta have the right material and the right.
Yeah, the whole thing has to be
the right room. Everything's got to align.
Yeah, and it might be fake, but still, you did it, and so who cares if it's fake? You did it, and it's cool, and you're in, on planet X, and that's all that matters at the time. So right. So anyway, yeah. Thanks for the question, Jeff. Yeah.
Well, that's it from the write-ins. Is there anyone have any questions they want to type into the chat real quick? And if not, we'll let Sean go because it's he's an hour ahead of us, so I don't want to keep him out too late. But we'll give you a minute or two to type in any questions. Otherwise, we'll call it an evening.
Well, I appreciate the club having me on. Sorry about my technical difficulties with my internet. That was totally on me. It wasn't Paul. So, and I'm glad he had some jokes set aside. That was, I'm hoping they were good.
No, I got booed.
Sorry for my overhead lighting. I forgot that this was going to be dramatic if I waited till the sun goes down. It wasn't intended.
Well, here we go. Here's a response from someone who says, very happy with the new Omen MK2s. So
yeah,
that's just props.
Yeah, love it. And I'll tell the guys, we put a lot of love into the speakers, and the Omens are fun. We love making them.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate your time this evening, Sean. Have a great evening, and I'll send you a link to this recording in case you ever want to use it for anything.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks to everybody: Jeff, Dave, Rick, Keith, Chris, Dr. Faust, and Spacey Dave. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Thanks again.
Take care, Sean. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.